Okay, I guess we'll see if this works. Again, back to the repairing the leaf table. Couple quick things here is rubber band I've got holding my cell phone onto the camera tripod. Looks like it's about to snap, so hopefully that doesn't happen. Um, I was trying to use the front face so I could actually look at the camera while I was doing it to make sure I don't get my hands in front of the camera where you all can't see what's going on, but hopefully this will work. Um, I was going to break this up, but we're going to try to do the whole thing in one piece if I can, removing the pins, making the pins, installing the pins, and pretty much everything at once. I also apologize if I get winded or I have to take a couple pauses, again with lemon juice, bourbon, and Sprite. Still having some throat issues, so hopefully I'll be able to talk through this. Again, the throat issues is from where my neck is broken, so just something to be aware of. Anyway, what we're going to do today is, as you can see, the pins. These are the old pins that are broken. Again, this camera setup's kind of wobbly. We've got the one pin. 2 out of 3 pins have been broken on this. And so we've got to drill these out to be able to put new pins in. I'm just going to use wooden pins. Again, this is a, I don't know, late 70s, possibly early 80s Ethan Allen. They did use plastic instead of wood like original. Again, if I get the hiccups, I apologize for any sound quality. Basically, the plastic ones are really easy to get out because, as you see, when they snap, they are hollow in the middle, so they already have a hole in them. If we're dealing with a wood pin and say it's sticking out yay far, well, if it's sticking out that far, you're probably not going to have to replace it anyway. But any of the wooden pins that get broken off here, what you want to do is center punch that pin before you try to drill it out. That keeps your drill bit from walking off. And also, you're going to have to keep that drill level and straight. I will be doing another video on making a jig and different jigs for drilling. This we're just going to do by hand. But you will have to keep the holes perfectly straight. Now, with these plastic pins, which is what a lot of you are more likely going to run into if it's something broken, they come out pretty easy because about the time the drill starts into that hole, it usually generally catches and twists it and breaks the glue bond loose. I found that on a lot of occasions to be the occasion to it. And so you'll see just how easy they come out. I'll get in the drill set up here in just a second. It's also hot out here. I turned the one fan behind me off. I've got the other fan just on low. I'm not sure if that's going to interfere with the sound quality, but it is. Oh, it's about 99 in here right now. 99 and no airflow. So, again, I have to get behind the camera to see where my focus is, and there's a slight lag time between movement and actual recording. But now, most often, generally, not always, but generally, these pins are going to be 3/8 inch stock. This happens to be 3/8 inch, so I have a 3/8 inch bit. I do know how deep my hole is, which is why. Simple piece of tape for a reference mark so I don't drill too deep into it. These holes are actually 3/4 each side. I have a total of 1.5 inches with both leaves. The hole and the pin hole are both 3/4, ends up with 1.5 inches. I'm cutting my dowels to 1.25 inches. Anyway, I've got a 3/4 inch stop mark on my bit, and well, let's just drill this. You want to start slow. Again, old drill, but but I know y'all probably got the new modern fancy schmancy stuff. So what we're going to do is keep everything, and what I will do is I will look down at the bit and I will look sideways from the bit to make sure I don't have a tilt or a camber, and that I am actually drilling straight, and that's another reason you want to start out slow. And unlike all the rest, this pin's actually not breaking out, so I'm going to have to actually full drill it. And there we go. Once I got it going, instead of being able to push in, I simply backed the drill out and it came with it, as you can see. So that's it. So while I've got this out, let's just go and do the other side. And pretty easy. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and unchuck this drill bit, because we're also going to use this drill to show you a cheater trick on rounding your dowel pins to fit. Done with the bit, so we'll set this aside. Just sit it on the table. Okay, so now, if we can see here, if my camera's okay, I don't know. I'm assuming y'all can see this when I do this because, again, cracked camera setup and not a great angle, but pencil. Tape measure. So, one thing I didn't show you when I had the leaf up there was once you get those pinholes drilled to determine your size. Now I just used micrometer, stuck the end in there, got my measurement. But all you have to do, and I won't bother bringing that back over, all you have to do is take your dowel. Well, where's my camera? There's my camera. You just take your dowel, you stick it in the hole, you mark the front. You know, I'm sure that y'all are more than smart enough to figure out how to stick the rod in the hole and mark it to see how deep the hole is. So again, this comes out to 1.5 inches for both sides. So I'm cutting them 1 1/4 inches. That gives me an 1/8 inch leeway space on each side. That's going to be more than enough for any expansion issues, which really you shouldn't have an expansion issue in a leaf table anyway. But just for getting jammed up or something in between it, that's going to give enough clearance for the leaves to fit together. Now, all these pins are doing is lining up the leaf and keeping it straight. You don't have to have, you know, a full, so that's going to be what, 1/2 inch. Oh, again, apologies. Well, actually, if you have that, that'd be 5/8. So you don't have to have a full 5/8 of space to join these two together. You don't want just a little nib sticking out, but as long as you have a full portion, and you will see when we round these, we're going to chamfer for this so it self-aligns and slides into the hole. But as long as the round portion, as long as you've got 1/4 inch, I would call bare minimum, but if you've got 1/4 to 3/8 inch of the cylindrical portion touching the inside of the female hole, your table leaf's going to fit in just fine. Okay, so to cut these, we've got several different ways. Most of y'all that have the fancy schmancy tools already know how to do this, so it's a moot point anyway. I guess a lot of this video is just for people that have never done any type of woodworking, they've never done any handyman, they don't have, you know, the latest greatest tools. They're not going to invest in high dollar tools just for a couple of small projects. So this is just a quick, easy way to do this. Now today I am using oak. You always want to use hardwood on these. Again, oak is perfectly fine. One of the downsides to oak is, if I can get that to focus, which side's my camera lens is over here. Okay. In these quick little small focus sections, you can see how porous this is. Oak has very large grain, a very large grain structure. And I guess I get to pause for just a minute while she's coming in. Anyway. But that very large grain structure means it's going to be a rougher surface. Also, these are going to tend to splinter out. Birch is an excellent choice for this. If you can find some birch dowel rods, or if you want to make your birch dowel rods, because we do have another video coming up on easy ways to make dowel rods. Yes, dear, it's still on.
Here, put this in this.
You know what?
Put this in the freezer there at the top. That does the door. Freezer door.
Okay, set it there. I'll get it in a minute. I don't have a pause on this thing. I'm sure the people probably don't want to watch me put the groceries up.
You check my 10 things that don't light up in the yard yet.
Not yet, dear. A little busy. Thank you. Okay.
Check on the buster.
Yes, dear. Yeah, laugh it up, Chuckle. She thinks it's funnier than hell. Anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted, birch is excellent for this. Birch has a tight grain structure. Birch is a really smooth wood. Maple will also work. Maple will probably be my last choice though, just because of the maple does tend to, over time, it tends to warp a little worse or flex. But when you're dealing with something this big, that's not going to be that much of an issue. I've just found that maple is more temperature sensitive, humidity sensitive. That thing would be why maple would be my last choice, but maple will work. But birch was excellent. And I'm about to show you how to cut the oak to where it does not splinter. Because oak is very easy to splinter, especially in a round cut. Not going to bother hooking this up, but my old sonic cutter with the good old half moon blade, excellent for doing this. If you don't have one, don't worry. Jigsaw, I really wouldn't recommend too much unless you're putting a fine tooth metal blade. Okay, she's fine. Put Buster back in the house. Having the dog sit the neighbor's dog, and he's about, he's hip high to me. So we got her little varmint, she's out now. So again, apologize for all the interruptions, but y'all got fast forward, so again, apologize. Anyway, I wouldn't recommend the jigsaw. An excellent thing to cut this stuff with is a hacksaw. Most people have a hacksaw. If not, buy you an $8 hacksaw. A hacksaw, even with the metal cutting blade, is just fine for cutting things like oak. Might take you just a little bit longer if you have a fine tooth metal blade in it for, like, you know, steel or fine copper pipe or something. But a general hacksaw blade works just fine, and it'll leave a smooth cut. Anyway, what I had done is I had needed one. 14 bucks I think it was at Lowe's. I've been needing a pull saw. My original Japanese, I think it was a 1900s vintage, early 1900s that is. Apparently got legs and walked off. But this one I've used a few times now. It comes with the hacksaw blade. I might as well just dump all these out. Never used the wood blade, but the wood blade on this, it's not a offset tooth, it's a double row tooth. And this says 14 teeth per inch. But because of the setup, this tends to grab into the fibers of the wood. That's not a real good choice. However, this also says 14 teeth per inch, but it's a straight line row of teeth. In other words, your teeth aren't offset. Boom, 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 like that. Again, hard to tell from behind the camera. But anyway, this works good. The hacksaw blade I found with the hacksaw blade in this setup is, it is a fine tooth, but because there's no frame to this, and these are cheap blades and they don't hold shape, well, they're not a tempered spring steel. It relies on the frame of the hacksaw pulling in both directions to keep this straight. So this just bends and flex too much, and it will bend a permanent bend. So we'll take that out. We'll put that in. And basically, hopefully my camera's where I can see it. Well, first we have to mark it, so. Inch and a quarter. Don't have to mark it all the way around. We're basically going to follow the line cut. You're still in the dryer. I have to turn them back on. They're not done. Put the towel down. I'll take care of it.
Oh, thank you for fixing my face thing, that's awesome.
You're welcome, dear. Okay, so anyway, not to draw this video out for an hour and a half for a 10-minute fix-it video. On your teeth, always be observant of which way your cut is, whether it's a push cut or a pull cut. Now this one happens to be a pull cut. The white blade we showed earlier, it's a bi-directional cut. It will cut on the pull stroke and the push stroke. So, something else to be aware of when we start rotating this so it doesn't split. Alright, here's my inch and a quarter line. What I'm going to do is, because this is a pull saw, and again, I can't see where my camera's pointing or where I'm at, I'm simply going to go right on the line and gently, and these things really stick. You might have to put a little force on it. My hands are shaky because that right shoulder is dislocated. Anyway, once we get a cut line started, instead of just cutting all the way through, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do as we're cutting, because this is on a pull stroke, I want to rotate the piece away from me. If it was on a push stroke, I would rotate the piece towards me. because what we're going to do is once we get a good line started there, we're simply going to rotate that a little. Take your time, don't have to be in a hurry. Rotate a little, just a little, because you don't want to get a big sharp corner up here, because if you do, it's going to catch. Just lightly rotate. And also just to lightly rotate. If you get your line started straight, you'll see when we come all the way around here. Let's see how far off I am. So I'm a little bit off. But this isn't cabinetry making. And this end is going to get furled anyway, so, and simply that way when we come back, again, this tooth blade is too aggressive for the work I'm doing. It's just too sharp and too aggressive. It bites into the wood. This isn't really made for hardwood, however. And this, because I was trying to do it in front of the camera, all the rest of them came out perfect, but you can see just how far off I am right there. But that's okay, that's not going to hurt anything. If you want, sanding block. Fixed. Also show why we're using a sanding block when we get the drill up here. Okay, so I'm done with all this. Or at least I was. Where'd my pen go? Ah, so yeah. I'd already cut one pin, so I only need 2 pins. There's my 2 pins. So what we end up with is a cylindrical shaped, i.e. square end pin. Now we need this chamfered so it will go in the hole of the leaf without binding up or catching. To do that, one, you can take your sanding block and you can sit there and, you can hand sand this down, but we already have a drill. So here's the trick. I'm going to chuck this up in the drill. Now you don't want to over tighten this. You don't need to leave it sticking up. Seat it too deep, but I just want to lightly, because these teeth are going to bite into that and I don't want to over tighten it. Let's see if I can move this back a little. And again, the reason for our sanding block. Now you can hold a piece of sandpaper in your hand if you want to, but I'm going to tell you, if you simply take a piece of sandpaper and you hold it in your hand, it'll work, but unless you've got 3 or 4 thicknesses, it's going to get hot and it's going to burn your fingers. Thus, and I'll make my own sanding blocks, as you can tell. Actually, this was a piece of scrap wood left over from a trim cut that I just simply didn't do anything to, except wrap my piece of sandpaper around it. Detail sanding in corners. Sanding blocks are another video. However, I will. And this is also a light piece of mostly worn 220, so it's not going to cut fast. This is just for illustrative purposes. And you simply hold that at hold that at an angle. And you can contour your bevel. 180 works great on this. Wouldn't run anything like 80 or definitely 60. It's going to cut too fast. It's going to leave you a rough cut. But 180 works real good on, again, apologies. 180 works real good on making chamfer cuts on these. Now, because I have a Dremel, And because I'm lazy, I'm 51. I've been doing this since I was that big. I'm going to cheat. So, I actually just hung this down here on my tripod, so let me reach down and get her. We've got the trusty Dremel. I was afraid I was going to get the coughing spell from my throat during this, but again, apologies. I got the trusty Dremel. Now, this is a fine grit. You can put a fine grit, you can put a medium grit on, doesn't really matter. What you have to consider is direction of spin of your drill and direction of spin of your Dremel. My Dremel spins to the right. I have my drill set to spin to the right. You don't want to crank this thing up to 15,000 RPM, and you definitely don't need her on 35,000 RPM. I got this on 10 because we're going to have double counter rotation. You don't want to spin your drill speed up immensely fast. But if I can show this, hopefully this shows on camera. I'm simply going to turn my drill on a little bit, turn my Dremel tool on a little bit. Okay, well, you get the idea. However, that happens to be the one for dog's toenails. Don't ask. Yeah, the dog gets her toenails trimmed with a Dremel. There's a regular one, even though it's a fine grit. And I eyeballing because I know what angle I want. You want to mark this and get your angle perfectly correct. That's up to you, but I'm just rounding this puppy off. So what we end up with, one kind of ugly chamfered. I could have done a better job, but again, instructional purposes. Do as I say, not as I do. And we have one chamfered pin. Alright, let me get all this stuff out of the way. So, she also, don't need both of those yet. She also used my glue brush for God knows what. So I don't have a glue brush. I'm just going to do this with my fingers. And yes, when I do the other pin for the other end, I'll make it prettier. Again, this is just so you all don't have to suffer through all my shortcomings here. Guess I should have started the video an hour earlier to get rid of all the interruptions. And actually, I am going to true that up just a little, so y'all give me just a moment. That's just the OCD in me coming out. Also, I was trying to look behind the camera instead of at the piece on that, so. Okay, that looks prettier. So when we go to glue these up, there's a few things we have to be worried about. This, because these were plastic pins and I didn't have to full drill the hole, and we already knew before starting that the holes did line up. They didn't break off because the pins didn't line up. It's because instead of somebody setting the leaf in the table, lining up the pin holes, and gently pushing it together, they just threw the leaf in there and slammed it on it. You know, trying to get it to self-center, that don't work. So, we know that the holes are good and straight. So I don't have to worry about lining these to the female holes on the table. And paper towel. I'm not going inside to wet a paper towel, so I'll just get bottled water out of the fridge. No water in the fridge. Apologies again, be right back. Glue up, always have a damp towel, or preferably a damp towel and a dry towel, or in my case a damp towel and a dry towel in one. You really want to have something to wipe this glue with. Now, I'm using Gorilla, not because I'm a die-hard Gorilla Glue fan. It was $1 cheaper for that bottle than it was the regular size bottle of Titebond. So she got this because it was cheaper. I've always used Titebond 2 for most of mine. That's another video. Difference in Titebond. Titebond 2. Now they have a Titebond 3. Your Gorilla Glues, your Elmer's glue. Why you want to use Elmer's wood glue instead of regular Elmer's glue wall, which Elmer's glue wall will work, but don't try to use Elmer's school glue. Yeah, that's another video. So, because I don't have a brush, double check. Nope, no brush. We're going to do this the old-fashioned way. Now, because this is a dowel, it's cylindrical, we're putting it in the cylindrical hole. Normally, on your wood glue or any glue ups, you want to put glue on both surfaces to be glued. This, we're not going to do that because we're going to have a 360-degree glue surface. That'll be perfectly fine. It does help to, also helps not to pull your glue cap clean off. Cheap bottle, Gorilla, cheap bottle. So we're just going to put a little on here. Set that over there. And make sure your fingers are dry, but we're just simply going to use the old fingers since we don't have a glue up brush. Again, it's not going to take a whole lot. You also don't want a lot of squeeze out. You do not want glue getting on the outside faces. Anything we get on the outside, we want to immediately wipe off. Hence, always keep a wet rag for your glue ups. I'm simply going to take this and lightly twist it as I put it in the hole. There she is. Wipe that off. Take my wet section. Don't have to scrub it, just gently wipe it off. And that pin is in. No muss, no fuss. Now we gotta let it set and dry, which I'll do the other one. So, what happens, you ask, if you have to full drill a hole? Excuse me, hiccups again. This terminally broken neck is, it's not killed me yet, but it's getting close. In more ways than one. What happens if you have wooden pins where you have to do a full drill and you're not exactly sure if these pins are going to line up? Hi, sorry, Mimi, I forgot you were still out here. You okay? Cool beans. The assistant helper. Psst. Can't see over my toolbox. Anyway, what happens if you need to line the pins? Now here's a trick that I came up with. I always keep wax paper. I use wax paper for everything from woodworking to glue ups. I keep at least 2 rolls in my bullet molding kits. I do use wax paper a lot for bullets. That's another video for the bullet side, which we are getting back into the bullet videos, casting videos, loading videos, all that fun stuff. You will take some wax paper, make sure the wax sides are out. In case you didn't know, wax paper has a wax side and a non-wax side. Make sure your wax side is out. You can fold it up 3 times. 3 times is plenty, no use in going 4. But what I would do is before I glue this pin in, I will take the flat end of the pin, set down on the wax paper, and trace it out. You don't want to try to push wax paper over that. You can make a cut slit in the wax paper. Push it over, but it's just a lot easier to pre-cut a hole the size of this dowel pin on the wax paper. Then what you would do, once you put this pin in, after you glue it, you set your wax paper, good portion of it, and you will set this into the table, and you will slide this leaf into the female holes, i.e. our female hose that you can see behind my cord there. You simply lay this in. Of course, I would show you, but I don't have the table open right now. Simply lay it in and gently push all 3 of your pins in at the same time, or however many pins you're gluing. You don't want to push it all the way in tight. Just enough to get the pins started to where they line. Put your table up, in other words, leave a space between, if your pins are going in that side, you will put your pins into those holes, slide this up gently, but you want to leave a space between each half of the table and your leaf, because there's no use in slamming it all the way in, but that will give you a reference point to where you line your pins up. The wax paper will keep the glue from getting on the table portions, and then you will leave it that